buy-to-let is dead.
Is buy-to-let dead? Well, the answer is actually yes.
Buy-to-let is dead.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
If you're a renter, you may have noticed that right now it feels harder than ever to find a home.
Ruined my entire year, if not my entire life.
Bidding wars, damp, mould, personality contests,
like X Factor,
evictions for no reason, and skyrocketing rent.
Entirely unfair and completely unmanageable.
Basically like the Wild West.
So what's going on in the UK right now? And is it really the worst time ever to be a renter?
Finding somewhere to rent is an ordeal, made worse by soaring demand. And as the number of available places shrinks, rent is going up across the UK at the fastest rate on record. Almost 3.5 million people in England have had their rent raised in the last year alone by an average of £115 a month. And according to one property site, a single renter spends more than a third of their income on rent.
Being a landlord is an absolute hassle. You're on holidays and there's always a problem. You know, you've got to get something fixed, a leaky thing. To get anyone into central London today to pay for their congestion charge and whatnot is at least £150, £180 just to come to get them out to diagnose a problem in the property.
Will ultimately you sell your rental property, do you think?
Yeah, or I just won't rent it out. I'll just leave it stagnant and then in 10 years or whatnot when I have to sell it because it's just too much of a hassle.
I mean, people are shouting at the radio now, of course, saying you're so selfish to do that. How would you respond?
Oh, yeah, you know what? I am so selfish because I started working from the age of 15 and had 2 or 3 jobs throughout my whole life, even after kids. So I am selfish because I've had a hard time, and I think the caller just prior to me is absolutely correct, right on, spot on, that the money can't go to people who can't control their budget because time and time again, this is the issue. It has to go from the government to the landlord. So the government and the people, they can't expect landlords to pick up the tab because they have an unfortunate situation.
Mike, someone's asked, my rent's gone up. Is my landlord just being greedy?
Well, landlords have costs too, and all of those costs have gone up. If they're on a variable rate of interest, I know some of my mortgages, they have tripled, quadrupled because of the interest rate rises. So even a 10% increase in rent is going to come nowhere near to covering that increase. If it's an HMO, obviously bills have gone up as well, so you're being hit double whammy. Then there's short supply of building materials, workers and builders, so they're more expensive. So costs have gone up for landlords. And not only that, obviously property prices since COVID has gone up as well, so therefore to buy rental stock has gone up. So inflationary pressures are getting up to rents, so it is natural, like everything else, unfortunately landlords are going to have to put up rents to cover these costs.
The cost of living has gone through the roof, and this is becoming so common now. I'm in my late 30s, pushing 40, and a lot of my friends all over the UK, it's a very common pattern. A lot of them having to move back in with their parents because they just simply can't afford to live. That's insane. 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds having to move back in with their parents. Just think about that for a minute. That is the state of the country.
I think, the solution would be my landlord not being able to do this in the first place. Having the right to stay in my home and keep paying an affordable rent.
A couple of months ago, one of my flatmates decided to move out of the flat. We were kind of shocked to find that the rent had increased by £500, which was like 27% rent increase.
Our rent was $520 each, and he wants to raise it to $700 each. It's a 35% increase, which is just completely unaffordable for us. This whole thing started when one of my flatmates said she wanted to leave.
Yeah, well, the 3% cap only applies to leases. It doesn't apply to the property. So when my flatmate moved out, it restarts a new lease, therefore the rent cap does not apply. This is a massive loophole in the legislation.
We've basically just decided that we need to leave and find somewhere else to live. It's been really difficult to find somewhere.
I do feel like basically forced to pay this much higher amount, which will be like a massive impact on my income. I do feel trapped.
A lot of people got buy-to-lets and HMOs and they've got them in their own name and they're just selling those because they are now not making any money from buy-to-let and HMO because they own them in their own name.
Currently their rent is around 500 a month, and then landlords come to them to say it's being put up at 250 quid. And already this person is in receipt of housing benefit. And then you're in a situation where you're trying to find out how the hell does someone clamor to get together another 50% of the rent that they're already paying. So you're looking down other ways that you can try and increase benefits. You're looking at things like discretionary housing benefit.
We've got rents at historic highs. I'm just going to repeat that again. Rents have never been this high.
I mean, last year was crazy, right?
Yeah, it was wild.
Places like Manchester and not even. We all talk about London, but actually,
well, London had already hit such a peak, and obviously with people leaving in the pandemic, although people are coming back, London rents have fallen slightly, but I mean, they're still astronomically high. We're looking at broadly like 20% increases last year across the country. And it was outside of London, East Midlands, Yorkshire, Manchester. Bristol's been really hard hit. It's the whole country. There are some places where rents are not going up at the same rate, but those places have a unique and distinct set of problems in their own right. So last year I was in Grimsby. Okay, rents there are not rising to astronomical levels, but the houses that are there are in really poor condition and the place has been completely decimated. There's a lack of opportunities for the people who live there. So it's important not to talk about the country in broad brushstrokes, because I think there are like localized problems with housing, but broadly with private renting, yeah, that's the picture. Historically high rents. And of course, house price inflation is slowing down, but we also have historically high house prices. Just to reiterate that, they have never been this high.
A really common question in every single letting agent's mind right now is, how do I generate leads? We are seeing less properties than we have ever seen, less stock than we've ever seen, more tenants than we've ever experienced, and a huge gap between the two.
My name's Dave Chorner, I'm 33, and our rent went up 26%. We were surprised at how much the rent was going up. And when we said, look, I think it's reasonable that there is going to be inflation. I think it is reasonable that prices do go up. We will negotiate at, say, 15%. Does that sound good to you? And they said, absolutely not. It's 26% increase or nothing. I think paying the higher rental price is absolutely never an option.
So the government is doing everything they can to get rid of private landlords and replace them with large corporate landlords. Now, private landlords are, mums, dads, grandparents, accidental landlords that own one or two properties. Essentially, they are the majority of the landlords out there. They are being pushed out of the private rental sector and they're being replaced with corporations, so corporate landlords. Now, if you've ever had to deal with utility companies, large utility companies, even the council, you understand how much of a headache, like how painful that is. That essentially will be the experience that most tenants will get.
Like in terms of my own personal situation, I'm working in just North Dublin City. And the average rent in Dublin is the highest in the entire country. And what I saw today was that basically my take-home pay at the end of the month basically matches what the average monthly rent would be in Dublin at the moment.
So where does that leave you? I mean, what's your situation?
Look, it's impossible. I mean, I selected teaching, first of all, because I always wanted to be a teacher. But I mean, you look at teaching like, you see it as a stable job. I mean, I'm 7 years into my career now and I'm almost 30. And at this point in my career, I expected some form of stability and security. What I've seen and what a lot of my friends who are teaching and my colleagues are seeing is that it's getting worse, and there is no stability. I find myself having to dip into savings for basics, shopping, fuel, bills, and as a result, I find the prospect of ever being a homeowner or being able to afford a deposit to even be considered for a mortgage completely unattainable.
We need a rent freeze in Wales now, and here's why. So the price of rent in Wales has gone up by £926. That's 15%, which is a lot. The housing crisis was already bad enough, and there are fewer and fewer affordable and safe homes within our communities. Westminster's economic crisis has driven up the cost of living while driving down wages.
UK rents to rise in 2023. A poll conducted by Aldermore Bank say that 2 out of 3 landlords are likely to raise rents by at least 10% over the next 12 months. 49% of the buy-to-let owners feel that it's harder being a landlord now compared to over a year ago because of the cost of living crisis. 48% were unable to expand on their portfolio last year, whilst 42% would consider downsizing if current market conditions continue.
A typical landlord owns 1 or 2 properties. So when they own 1 or 2 properties, they're a self-employed person who most likely didn't have a pension, and they bought a property or 2 to pay off during their working career and then live off that income as they retire. Now this investment vehicle has been taken off the table in the eyes of so many of the small landlords. The reason being the uncertainty is frightening the bejesus out of them, and rightly so. They can't spend their entire life working to clear off a mortgage on a couple of renting properties only to have the rug pulled from them at the last minute. There needs to be some kind of incentive to welcome landlords back into the market, and unfortunately up until now the political appetite hasn't been there for that.
If you're not from Ireland, you might not know that our country is slightly falling apart. We have a massive housing crisis, inflation has gone through the roof, and apparently 70% of young people want to leave. Just for reference, this was a queue just to view a house. I myself decided to make the move to Italy last year because it was cheaper for me to actually be on the road and stay in hotels than pay rent in the west of Ireland.
You can clearly see now with the rules and stuff that the Conservatives have put in since 2015 with Section 24. I think looking at the stats, I think 66 rental properties are leaving the market every day, and I think we've lost probably 250,000 rental properties from that private rental sector already. This has now sort of led to a spike in house prices, spike in rents.
So basically this is what you get for 850 quid. Sink in the wrong corner. That's the cooker. That's the fridge. What's that?
Cheese box.
Oh. What, that's the pull-out toilet?
What will be? Shower's not bad, it's big.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, it's got a little...
I'd rather live in the bathroom than I would the flat, to be fair.
To move now, I'm not going to even find a 2-bedroom for 1,002. Like I said to you yesterday, I was looking at properties and 1 bedroom was 1,002 and 1,003. And what I don't feel that I should have to get up and move. I mean, I moved here 9 years ago, like I said, because it was cheaper. I thought it would be better than London for the children. It's a nicer area. I don't feel that why should I have to get up now and have to move even further out and restart life again to try and find something cheaper. I'll totally have no one, and I'm already kind of housebound. I barely mix with anyone after I got ill, and it's really rare that I leave the house apart from getting my meds and popping my son to school sometimes, you know. So I'm just going to be totally isolated to try and get into a budget because nobody wants to help.
Finding a place to rent in Dublin. Good luck finding one.